Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and I'm glad to have you give me another second or minute or hour of your day so that we can get into something and chop it on up. It took me a second to get on because I was trying to also get the computers on either side up and running. And this was on the fly. So thank you for joining us for another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. This is on the fly, a peep into American Idiocracy. Now, for us to get an understanding of what I'm talking about and what I'm trying to convey to you, we're going to have to go to the dictionary, okay? We'll go to the dictionary as the system boots up. Hold on, because as I said, this was on the fly. See if we can get to it. Okay, we're on Google now. So let's look at the meaning of idiocracy. Meaning of idiocracy. Oh man, it came up. Meaning of idiocracy. According to the dictionary in Google, a society or group that is controlled by or consists of people of low intelligence. Now that says a lot, doesn't it? A society, or group, or a society of people that consists of low intelligence. And why did I say that? It's because the American and the Western political system have deliberately at times and unknowingly at times dumbed down the society so that the people in power can stay in power and the people who are ascending to power can finally get to power and have an ignorant base that they can exploit and take advantage of. They believe that this is in the best interest of the nation that they're from and also the global world order. This is why the global world order is collapsing. That's why it is under strain and stress, and it is being removed by on the order of God. God is using all of these chess pieces on the board to cripple and weaken the current global world order, or the so-called quote-unquote rules-based order, or the quote-unquote international order, which is run by America and the Western world. They are deliberately now dumbing down the society, believing that if they can keep an ignorant masses, they can then push through policies that in reality is detrimental to the masses, detrimental to the republic, detrimental to the entire globe. But it doesn't matter and it doesn't bother them as long as it suits their political and economic goals. They don't take the time to realize, as I often say, and I will continue to hammer this point home, that the proper education is what civilizes people, and it also is the key and the base for a growing and prosperous society. Without the proper education, what happens? The society soon falls in disrepair, violence everywhere, divisions everywhere, dissatisfaction exploding, right? Inequality, racism, culturalism, sexism, fascism. All of these isms become an element on the society, and they lay at the base of the society. They lie at the base of the society as economic, political, cultural, racial thermite, helping to bring down the weight-bearing wall of society. We see that. I see the chat. I'll respond to the chat just a second. We're just getting jumped. And CC is in the chat already. Shout out to CC. Thank you for joining. Thank you. I have to put that up there first. But they don't take the time out because there's so few. They want to mold not only society in their republic as they wish to mold them. They want the entire world order, regardless to culture, race, religion. They want it molded in their image and in their likeness at the cost of everything. And they don't care how ignorant they have to dumb you down to. They believe that in the end, it is beneficial not to the society, not to the republic, not to you, and not to the world order, but to them and those who think like them and who are in the same power circles as they are. This is really what is happening to the entire world. People are fed up. And more people are starting to become inquisitive. And this is not conducive to a fascist, centrist society. Because if you become inquisitive, you want to know. And one question leads to another question, which leads to another question, which they don't have the answers to. And if they are to be honest with you, then it can lead to a revolution. And here it is, they're caught in the catch-22. If they lie to you like they do now, it leads to a revolution. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place and a catch-22 that now it has reached such a dire state of affairs that regardless of what happens from this point on, you will see war and revolution because people are tired of being exploited. People are tired of being lied to. People are tired of being talked down to by those people who are supposed to represent them and represent their interests. If you just look in America, look at the politicians and the political system there. They ignore the will of the people. They ignore the wishes of the people. And even as the people demand, hey, listen, you're taxing me. And at the same time you're taxing me, and you're saying that you don't have money for bridge repair, road repair, after school programs, Head Start, school, but you always find money for war. I didn't tell you to tax me like this, but yet you want to tax me, and then you want to take my money and the money of others and use it for your interest, for your gains, while you and the likes of you skirt around taxes and don't pay your share of taxes. This class warfare. And the system has become so unyielding to the cries and the fears and the longing and the wants of the people who the system is supposed to represent. It is causing a backlash now, and the people are now screaming out for a change of the system, the overthrow of the system, revolution to change this. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal or if you're a conservative or if you're non-aligned. The masses of the people are reaching out for something more because what they have is no longer sufficient. And those in power are doing everything they can to hold on to power because of their selfish, self-centered, greedy, unyielding thirst for power and influence. These are megalomaniacs. These are sociopaths. And it's leading the world down to war. We see this every day. I want to take you to something. Where is it? Right here. Let's go to something. I want to discuss something with you all as we watch the world burn. The world order. When I say world, I'm not talking about the world, the earth. I'm talking about the order, the political order, the economic order, the so-called geopolitical hierarchy. Okay? Now, America and the West made this big brouhaha up about grain exports from Ukraine. And now you're hearing Latin America and Africa and Asia saying that they are not getting the exports that were supposed to come from this so-called grain deal that Russia allowed under UN auspices so that exports of wheat and grain could be shipped to Latin America, Europe, Africa, the Caribbean, the Pacific Isles, and Asia. But what we did find out is that these shipments have been going to Europe and they have been stored in warehouses to the benefit of the people who have caused the crisis in Ukraine. Now, the average European over there is suffering from inflation and having to choose, just like the average person around, they're having to choose between medicine and heating, energy or water. And these thieves, these people who are addicted to power are siphoning off the wheat, the grain, everything, and putting in their storehouses for their benefit. They bombed Gaddafi because he wanted to turn Africa into the breadbasket of the world. They bombed the aquifers. All of this is connected. This is what I'm telling you. This stuff is not done independently. All of these things were thought of when they were making plans to make Russia, entice Russia into Ukraine. All of this was planned when they were overthrowing the governments in Latin America, and they were destabilizing the Horn of Africa. All of this stuff is going on right now. Under the war that is going on in Yemen, the agriculture of Yemen, the Yemeni people have been decimated by Israel, the UK, the US, France, and so-called NATO nations. These things are not done in isolation. They're done because of policy initiatives. Okay? Why would one of the first 3 acts done by NATO when you go into Libya was to bomb the aquifers? To destroy that. If you were going to depose the leader, wouldn't you leave the infrastructure? And now you're whining about an influx of refugees and immigrants. You destroyed the institutions that makes any nation or any government a viable nation or a viable government. So the people are fleeing from the results of your bombing and your policies, and they're trying to get over to you and say, hey, you owe us something. You destroyed our leadership. You destroyed our government. You destroyed our aquifers. You took our gold. You took our currency reserves. You're stealing our oil. You're pillaging our gas. And now you're screaming that we're coming over invading you. What? We haven't dropped the bomb on you. You are still in our nation with your oil companies, siphoning off our resources. So you owe us something. We're not here just living off you. And if we bring violence to you and some of your cities are turned into ghettos, guess what happened? That's still an upgrade from what you've done to Libya. You bombed Libya into the Stone Age, where people are being traded, human beings are being traded on the streets. People are being kept in cages. All because of greed and corruption and racism and arrogance of NATO. And so we look at the destruction of the aquifers so that the desert couldn't be turned into fertile, minerally rich land to grow food for the entire world. We look at what was going on in Latin America when they were trying to do the same thing in America, and her minions overthrew the legitimate governments of those countries, and all of those plans were pushed back. We look at the Yemeni nation where Britain and America and Israel specifically, and then France and all the other nations are pillaging the resources and purposely decimating the fertile rich agricultural land as they are doing in Syria. It's a pattern here. Listen, if you bump into me one time, that is a mistake. If you bump into me twice, that may be a mistake. But if you bump into me every 5 minutes, that is on purpose. Is that not right? So if all of these events are taking place at the behest and under the orders of the West, you have to look at it for what it is. When a person shows you who they are, believe them. They are purposely destroying agriculturally rich land. Listen to what they've done in Syria. They've gone over there and occupied a third of that nation illegally. The UN hadn't said a word. The whole world is talking about Ukraine. Nobody has said nothing about the United States getting mad and bombing the legitimate government and militaries of the Syrian Arab Republic. Nobody is talking about how America not only is in control of 80 to 90% of the oil and gas reserves in Syria specifically. This was no mistake. But they are not talking about America taking convoys full of wheat and grain from the fertile and minerally rich area that produces almost all of the wheat and grain for the nation of Syria. When they used it domestically and they exported some, the United States is over there with the UK, I might add. They don't get enough credit for being right there next to the United States. On a almost daily basis, they are taking convoy trucks loads of Syrian wheat and grain through the border into Iraq without the paying, without even acknowledging the legitimate rights of the people there. or the government. If you ignore the government, what about the people that are screaming, hey, how are we going to eat? How are we going to eat? And then you want to ship some of it to Israel, while Israel is purposely destroying farmland by the Palestinians. Purposely doing it. There's no outrage in the United Nations. There's no outrage in the Western press. Why? Because the Western press are prostitutes. That's what they are for. They sell their stories and their attention to the highest and the most powerful bidders. They are prostitutes. They sell their goods for profit. Regardless to the suffering of the many, they cater to the minority. And they will give you a storyline, hook, line, and sinker, to make you think that the victim is the assailant. They will give you a storyline, like they say, and here it is. Let's go to something that they often say in the news media. I have to bring this up because I'm saying to myself, why does nobody take them to task on this? They are illegally in the territory of Syria. Let's just go there for a second. They are illegally and knowingly stealing the oil and the gas. Oh, I see you. I'll bring you in just a second. They're stealing the oil and gas. They're stealing the grain and the wheat. And the people are rising up trying to fight with their little Kalashnikov rifles or the AK-47s and the little handheld rocket launchers to try to stop the U.S. from doing this. And then the U.S. goes and says, we have the right to defend ourselves. We will keep the. So if we use the U.S.'s own logic, if I come into your house to steal your property, now I'm there, not at the behest of anyone there. I don't even know you. I live in a different state. But I just decided, hey, that house looks good. I saw the TVs on the wall. I saw the big refrigerators and all of this stuff. And I saw all the jewelry lined up in the bedroom. So you know what? Hey, they invite me in. I'm gonna go fight. I'm gonna go invade that house to stop anybody else from invading it. That's what they said. We're going to fight. We're going to invade Syria to fight terrorism, even though they're the ones pushing terrorism. So I'm going to go in your house. I'm going to illegally occupy your house and start stealing your jewelry, your television, and all of your material goods. And I relegate you, your wife, and your children to the bedrooms. Now, if you start shooting at me, according to America in the West logic, I have the right to shoot back at you because I have a right to defend myself, even though that I am illegally I've illegally invaded your home. I'm illegally occupying your home. I am brutalizing and victimizing your household, and I'm stealing all of your goods out of there. According to the West logic, if you start to defend yourself against what I'm doing, I have the right to defend myself against you. This is insanity. Let me bring Rashid in. I see him down at the bottom. Let me bring him in and let him comment on this. Rashid, go ahead and comment. And by the way, how you doing today?
I'm alive, black. You still don't understand. The West is the king. I'm king, and you supposed to do what I say you're supposed to do. That's the way he thinks. He can't see anything outside of that. I am the ruler, and you are my subjects. And the king don't concern with what the subjects do. You do what I tell you to do. I can come in and kill up everybody and brutalize and rob and steal. And nothing is said. Why? Because that's what kings do. You can't get upset with him. He has been riding the mantle of rulership for the last 6,000 years. And that's all that he can see, that he is the ruler. Now, was it right for him to come over here and steal America from all the millions of Indians? Was it right for him to steal South America from the millions? Was it right for him to go and rule and rape Africa and Asia and Australia and all of it? No. What did he call it? His manifest destiny. It's right because I did. And just like the people that came over here and stole America, the people of Israel feel and do the same way. What they say, America can't say nothing to me the way you raped and stole from Indians. I'm just doing what you did. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way he feels. So you can't get upset with him. His fathers were robbers and thieves, and he's a robber and a thief. So you can't get upset with the Palestinians, with the Jews of Israel are just doing what the Americans, the English, the French, and all of them did. So, even though it's out of season for him to do this stuff, he still feels that it's all right because that's all I know how to do is rob and steal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I just want you to see this mindset. Now, Rashid, you're in California. I come to your house. And I walk past your house. I see you and your wife and your children having a good time. You have food all on the table. You have jewelry everywhere. And I just kick through the door and start brutalizing your family and taking your goods. And I say, you know what? I'm relegating you, your wife, and your children to the bedrooms. The rest of this is mine. And I'm going to take what I want out of here. And then you start shooting at me with the US's logic. I'm justified in shooting back at you, even though I am an occupier and I have illegally come into your house and illegally taken your goods and demand that you be relegated to just a certain portion of your house. The mentality of this is outrageous. The mentality, it is absolutely unbelievable.
It's what he done throughout the centuries. You can't get upset with him for doing that. He's been doing this for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Once again, how did he get America? He came and conquered and stole people's land. He's just doing the same thing with the Palestinians. And now he want to wipe them out. And you're not going to get him to change. He's going to do the same thing. And if he can go and give his friends every weapon, including the kitchen sink, M16s, yeah, Abrams tanks, smart bombs, dumb bombs, bomb bombs, right? And if somebody turn around and give his people, then he fires shot. And then go up to the UN who he made, and the rest of the people around the world they're not that bright. They're kind of still slow. The UN was made by him and his friends to control you. And then you're gonna run to the UN. Well, right? Him, his brother, England, yes, France, and then he got Russia, that's the opposition, and China, the opposition. And then these 5 members can call a veto and throw anything out. Now, the West is about what, 12% or 10% of the world, but yet and still it owns the lion's share of that. It shows you, until you realize who he is and deal with him on the level that he is, you're going to always be behind the 8 ball. He is not to be trusted. He's not to be he's not a nice guy. Nice people don't go 10,000 miles away from their own home, steal up other people's land, rape, rob, and bomb, and then bring all of their goods back to them. That's what nice people do.
Yes, sir. I understand what you're saying. So, again, finish your thoughts. Finish your thoughts out.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. That until they wake up and realize that this guy is not a friend. He is always there to connive and trick and hoodwink and make a fool out of people and steal their natural resources.
Yeah.
Once again, all of the wealth of the planet is in the people of the global South. what is in the north?
Yeah.
Then how can you be rich and you be poor? Right?
Right.
So
Right.
I tell you, the to wake up and see who he is. See him for it, see his true face. And as long as you go by his games, play his shell games and his 3-card mollies and all of that stuff, and I was watching this movie called Casino. What is Casino? You go to a casino and the guy robs you and puts a smile on you while he's robbing. The casino is not made for you to make money. It's made for him to make money. And this is what we say about that dollar bill of his. Until they get out of his dollar bill, you'll always be dancing to his tunes. No, let it.
All right. Now, I'm glad you said it. Now I want to go to something because this bears witness to what you're saying. Now I want the world to listen to this. We all know that China is the largest manufacturer, the largest producer, the largest investor, the largest trade partner to pretty much everybody in the world. We know this. So they hold economic sway and clout over a large portion of the planet Earth. Okay. Now I want you to see the arrogance in this right here. Because someone has to look at this arrogance here. This is why I often tell y'all, listen to what people are saying. Not what you want them to say, but listen to what they are saying and how they're saying it to you. Now, there's an article out, it came out yesterday. And it's talking about Mr. Gardner. You know, the gardener. You know who I'm talking about, Mr. Joseph Borrell, the foreign policy chief of the Garden, Europe, right? And this is what he says. This is the headline of the article. EU wants cooperation with China, but Beijing must behave properly. As if Beijing is over there in China, as if they are children or beneath the European Union. Now, listen, when we look at this, Europe has little to no resources, little to no real effective agriculture. But you're talking to China as if China is a peon and you're this great elephant, which is crazy. Let's read a little bit of this because I haven't read anything. I just saw the title of it. Let's go to it. It says the European Union intends to continue constructive cooperation with China on solving global issues, but listen to this here, but expects China to behave positively, especially with regard to the situation in Ukraine. Now listen, almost all EU countries are training Ukrainians, and they have sent or are sending mercenaries into the Ukraine, and they have sent weaponry, and they are funding this, and they're talking about what China might do. And if China does this or does that, then the EU and the US will have a real appraisal of their relationship with China. Now, all of this, I just want people to understand the mentality of this. Okay, I can advance my policies at the expense of everybody else. I can arm whoever I want to arm to the teeth, and I can ally with whoever I want to ally with. But if you ally with the people that I'm allied against, that's a friendship breaker. That's a friendship breaker. Because my policy supersedes yours, and my national interest supersedes your national interest, and my desires supersede and trumps any desires that you have, especially if you're not a non-Western nation. He goes and says this. He says, the European Union is committed to continue a constructive engagement with China in order to solve the global challenges. But China, listen to this right here. I'm telling you, man, oh my God. If he was on the jiu-jitsu mat with me, I would choke him out. If he was in the sparring match with me, I would front kick him. I'm just telling you, because of the way he's talking. Listen to what he says. But China is expected to behave as a positive and constructive global player, especially with regards to Russia's aggression against Ukraine. That means we're going to ignore the overthrow of the legitimate government of Ukraine that the United States and the EU took part in, and even admitted that they did it, and then say, well, it happened. Well, we go from there. And then I'm going to ignore you putting Nazis into power. And then for 7 years, arming and training and funding these Nazis to the second most well-armed military in the West, meaning second only to the United States. The Ukrainians had the best military and weaponry, second only to the United States after this 7-year training. Then I'm going to put NATO bases all across Ukraine, ignore all of that. And then I'm going to openly say we're going to invite Ukraine to join NATO. And then I'm going to openly, after that, say that we're going to put a naval facility in the place that is historically Russian. And I'm going to open up another naval base in the Sea of Azov, which is right on your coast. And if you react to this, you are aggressive. Man, if you don't get out of here with that foolishness, it's crazy. Rashid, what have you to say about this madness?
You said that your friend, they're not China's friend. I keep saying it. They're a friend to nobody. They're a friend of nobody. And the way he's talking to China, he's talking to him as a master-slave mentality. You better do this. You better do that. You better do what I tell you, or else. You know you better do that. It's like China is their servants. They thinking that China back in the 1800s, with the century of humiliation, they still think that they have sway over China. They still want to humiliate China.
Yes,
that's what that did. And as I said before, China need to stop thinking about a few nickels that he's making with America and stand up against him. No, you don't want to bully somebody. The only one that's going to be stopped is you stand up against him. If you still kowtow to him and let him run around here and rule, and well, you can't go over there. You bet not drive your ship over there. You bet not that he gonna continue. You got to stand up to him to stop him.
You got to sock him in the mouth.
Extremely hard. You like to say, when you fighting a gorilla or whatever, you don't go around tiptoeing through the tulips with him. You hit him with everything you got. Empire. Yeah. You gotta strike back at him. You just got to do that.
And you got to be willing. You got to be willing to face all the consequences. It brings me to something. I remember when I was in a jiu-jitsu match, and this guy he didn't like me for some reason, and we had to go against each other.
I wonder why.
and so in the middle of the match, my pinky finger got stuck in between the little the connector cushions or whatever, and I snapped my finger back, broke it. And they were like, well, we're going to have to disqualify. We'll give him the match. And me being stubborn, like my wife said, you're so stubborn, it's ridiculous when it comes to stuff like that. You hate to lose. So I was like, no. They was like, yeah, you have to. I said, no, give me 1 second. So because I was in control position and I was winning in out. So I stood up against the wall and I turned my head and I snapped my finger back in the spot and went back in there and commenced to beat him because he was the bully. And he was shown to be beaten by this old guy because I was like 12, 15 years his senior or something like that. And I had a broken pinky. He could not live that down, man. And that's what China has to do. China has to hit them hard and hit them and knock them in their pride because I'm telling you, if you continue to just speak to the United States and keep telling them what you're going to do, look what Russia has done. Russia has given out all of these red lines. And what they do, they send out fillers. And America kept crossing the red lines. And then there was a report that came out that the U.S. says that they no longer fear Russia's escalation because the United States have already stepped over so many red lines. So they don't believe that Russia would react in such a way that would cause a face-to-face confrontation. If you don't sock them in the mouth, if you don't confront the bully head on, the bully knows nothing but continue to bullies and to continue to take and to continue. Go ahead.
I'll give you a perfect example. Syria and Israel.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example. If you don't stop him, he'll come and shoot you, throw lob bombs on you every other day. Mm-hmm. Every day and twice on Sunday. Now, Hezbollah hits back. How many bombs are they lobbing on Hezbollah? There's no thing called sitting around having peace with a bullet. It's just not gonna work. He never. Tell me, where have America left? Right? Tell me, where did she pack up and leave after she went over there and conquered them people?
Nope.
Can you think of any place? The only place that I've known that she left is she got thrown out, right?
And that was Afghanistan.
Vietnam. Right? Vietnam. And then the people, silly people, and some of them at least invite them back in to do the same stuff over again.
You know, a lot of them, when they look at the situation in Ukraine, as I was telling about the grain and the resource grab by the United States, people don't realize that all of this has been planned for a long time. The overthrow of Gaddafi was planned. America never forgave Gaddafi for pushing him out of Libya. They never forgave him for that. And they had contingency plans that one day, when they got a chance to, they were going to overthrow Gaddafi. And there was this movie, I think it's called No Way Out. Remember, I told you about that before, years ago. And I was the first person to ever speak on this. Everybody else talks about this, but I was the first one. This movie with Ray Liotta, the late Ray Liotta in it. And he was a military guy. And he went to this island concentration camp, and he kept having these flashbacks. And these flashbacks, there was a outbreak of protest.
No Escape.
Yeah, No Escape. Yeah, I said No Escape. And he had these flashbacks about what took place in Libya, and how there was so-called protests, and then there was a confrontation between the protesters who were terrorists and the government. And this is how he wound up in the concentration camp. And guess what? A protest in the key battles took place in Benghazi. That was no coincidence. That's exactly what took place in Libya about 20 years later, 15, 20 years later from that movie. Now, what I'm saying is this. When you look at Ukraine, you cannot look at it as an isolated area. I'm going to tell you, we knew when America moved against Yugoslavia that she was moving slowly but surely towards Russia. But I'm going to tell you the game changer, when America really started to up her game, when she got no blowback from Russia. And that is when the U.S. and NATO assassinated their puppet, Rafik Hariri, in Lebanon. And they blamed it on the Assad government. And what they did, they put so much pressure on him that they forced him to pull his troops out of Lebanon. And Lebanon was the hedge against Israel using warplanes to bomb Syria. So they pulled back. And from that point on, Israel had free flight over Lebanon, and she could bomb Syria. So when this play went into action about these terrorists that the United States and Turkey and all of them transported to Syria, all of it started taking shape. And when Russia didn't do anything about this, it emboldened the empire.
Russia was too weak at that time.
Yes, she was.
Once they had that drunken fool Boris Yeltsin,
but not
CIA plant, put that buffoon
Yeltsin
in there.
Wasn't there. Listen, Yeltsin wasn't there when Rafik Hariri was assassinated.
The Soviet Union. Well, first of all, remember, the Soviet Union and still Russia do have ties with Israel.
Yes, that's right.
Everybody know America's Israel and Israel is America. You know,
right.
They were born in the same bed together. But Russia was supposed to be Syria's ally. Russia didn't give Syria any top-notch weapons to fight. They never give anyone anything to fight against Israel. Never. Israel has the the strongest. So that's the reason why she was ready to bully everybody and slap everybody around the Middle East, because she had superior weapons. She don't have superior weapons now. With the rise of China, China has armed up Iran, Hezbollah, and them. And like I was talking to a couple of brothers today, that she's talking about she gonna fight. She gonna go to war with everybody and go slap every. And then we're gonna fight Hezbollah. Hezbollah is not Syria. When you go up in there again, it's Hezbollah. They hit back and hit back hard. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth of it. But we've seen him bombing Gaza and the rest of them. It just whenever he gets frustrated, he goes and beats somebody that he's been beating up for years, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what Syria is. That's what he's doing. I haven't heard that he's talking about bombing up Hezbollah, but let's see him do it first. Mm-hmm. What they say, that Hezbollah is on the level of that Wagner group. Hell of a fighters, boy. and before you go running in there, you need to know what you're doing. So he may be a bully, but he knows when to pick his battles.
Yeah. And now we're watching, but Russia could have done something without openly intervening. Russia could have upgraded Syria's weaponry so that Syria could have been more robust, but they chose. And I want you to see this, because a lot of people they put all as though Russia is innocent in this, and we know that America is guilty of this. But how is it that Russia is willing to sell the S-400s to a NATO member, S-300s to NATO members, S-35s to NATO members, but an ally, a true, through thick and thin ally, Syria, just had a half a dozen of MiG-29s and upgraded 1970 weaponry. It is insane. Russia was trying to appease the Israeli lobby in Russia. And because that's what it is. And it has led to them to lose out big time. Look, but see, trying to appease that, look where it put Russia. This is what I'm saying. You cannot appease bullies. You cannot take kickbacks and bribes from corrupt people, because that makes you tainted a little bit. And you cannot, after all of this happens, you can't say, well, I'm totally innocent in this, because if you would have blunted them, just like you and I were talking when the war first started, and I was telling you in Syria, I said, now watch this, Rashid. America hasn't entered the fray with her military, but watch, she gonna send wave after wave of terrorists to them air bases, those air defense bases. And once they were overrun, and they were and the terrorists took some of the northern and the eastern air defense bases, all of a sudden America declared we're gonna go in. They were working but see, they were the U.S. was afraid to lose warplanes to those Panzer systems. They were afraid to, so what they did, they sacrificed their minions to send wave after wave after wave of terrorists to take over those military bases.
And at that time, before Russia, the only one who was in there fighting with him was Iran.
The only one.
Only one.
Well, Iran and Hezbollah.
Well, that is Hezbollah. That's like Israel and America. When you see one, you see the other, right?
Yeah. So we talk about, Rashid and I, we have all of these deep conversations long before, and we see a lot of this stuff by the grace of God. We see a lot of this stuff before it happens and before it transpires. And I was talking to Rashid one time as it was going on. I said, Turkey better watch itself, because she thinks the empire is backing her as she turned her back on Syria. I said, and before you know it, the U.S. going to turn the dagger to Turkey, and this is what took place.
Is the empire has no friends,
no loyalties
to anybody.
What did Scott Ritter say? He says America is friends to no one.
To no one.
He said America only cares about America's interests. Forget everybody. She has no friends.
What did Henry Kissinger say? That you may be a enemy, enemies of America. how did he say it? That you may be an enemy of America's is truly he's on the outs, but a friend of America is really, his friends are really more dangerous than his enemies. He's more dangerous to his enemies than to his friends. If you are your friends, it's just like a chess piece. He'll go and sacrifice a pawn to get another objective, and that's what that is. He sacrificed these pawns, little bitty countries and stuff, because he got another long-ranging objective.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys might be his friends, but push you out there and you get wiped out, and then he's going in another direction. Like what Scott Ritter said, he'll declare victory and then leave. Like the poor little puppet that was in Afghanistan. You gonna be with me? Yeah, we're gonna be with you. And then the next day they were flying on the planes out, people jumping on there. And next thing you know, the little puppet he had in charge, he had to fly and go to Dubai or somewhere like that with
suitcases full of money.
Full of money, yeah, suitcases full of money. Well, why didn't you stay? I had no more support.
Yeah, and we see that coming with the Kurds in Iraq. I mean, in Syria too. But one thing you can never tell these guys, that's where you're gonna wind up. They always take the game and go for the bull. They always do. I'm with him. But wait a minute, man. He didn't turn his back on so many people. You better be careful. Oh no, he said it's gonna be different this time. That's why that corruption. I want to play a clip here to go to what we're saying, that America has no friends. Now, if she says that the European Union is her allies and the European nations are her allies, look at what is being said about the United States policies and how the U.S. would wreck Europe if they had the chance. Just check this out.
Macron has the convenient cover of Ursula von der Leyen, and looks as though he is doing what America wants him and her to do. This is a show for the Americans. It's a show for the European domestic audience to shut them all up when his 50 top executives who came on that big plane with him to Beijing do what they came to do, which is to sign business deals. Those business deals are not going to be widely advertised because France does not want to attract undue attention to its need for Chinese business. The United States has wrecked the German economy by severing ties with Russia for cheap energy, and the United States would wreck European retailing business if it succeeded in decoupling the European markets from China. France understands that, and Mr. Macron has very cleverly covered his business objectives with this screen of foreign policy lecturing to the Chinese.
We have a question in the audience from Astral Atmosphere. Matter of fact, let me see if I can highlight it here real quick. Let me go to the chats, and then Rashid, I'll let you, because I wasn't aware of this part, so I'll highlight this part right here. He says, or she says, why did Lebanon shoot I think it's missiles at Israel?
You've got a foreign occupier in the Muslim lands, right? It'd be like somebody come to America and another country come and take over Washington, D.C. and put their little proxy in there. Everybody around, all the Americans around don't like it. And they will be trying to do something to get them out. This was an occupier that came in and took over these people's land. And then, like he said before, got all of them in the, they come in the house and then they relegate them to the backyard. And if every time they move, they shoot a missile at them. What the people in the neighborhood is going to get mad at that. The Europeans are the ones who set up these little government, these little states. It's the Muslim Ummah. They don't consider themselves Muslims from Iraq or Turkey. That's what it used to be. It's the Muslim lands. He the one that came in and put into these little states and then put the little puppets in there that do his bidding. The Muslim street is not with him. So that's what that is. They see their brother being bombed up and dogged out, and they want to help. Let me put it this way. What is the state of NATO? When they say all for one and one for all, if you hit one, you hit all. Well, then that only applies to him, right? But when you go and hit everybody else, you're supposed to lay down and take it. Everybody else is about time out for that stuff. Yeah. This big confliction of war is getting ready to take place in the Middle East.
Yeah.
The Middle East is going to go up like a Christmas tree.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You better believe it.
You can't stop this.
And all of
they should have been done it. But everything comes on time. You know, you got one little guy in there with a big old rocket shooting missiles at everybody that moved, turning and sitting up laughing. And then this is the kicker. The guy's big brother who put him in place. And you run around talking about he's your friend. How can any Muslim be a friend of America or England? They the one that split up the Middle East and put up these puppets in charge.
France.
Yeah, these guys.
You remember France split up and made Lebanon, Syria, even had a part in Jordan and all of these areas right here. France played a major part in splitting up the Syria region or whatever like that.
And he took all of these Christian people and exported them into this little bitty place he made up called Lebanon. So this is what they say, to have a Christian country in the middle of the Muslims so he can control them. That's the way he operates. Have one guy fighting against another guy, set up a straw man, and have you fighting one another. Then he come in as the mediator where he control both parts. Right. He done that all around the world.
And in the middle of all this, let us not forget or take our eyes off the true reason why all of this is happening, especially at this time, is because of the panic that has set in the Western world and all of the capitals of the Western world as they see the dollar being upended. Again, we go back. The dollar may be the world reserve currency, but we know that the sterling pound and the euro is connected hip and neck and shoulder to it. And if one falls, the other one falls. That's a domino effect. So listen, what most people need to understand is that you have a world, the rules-based so-called order, and a Pharaoh just order clashing with each other and colliding. And remember, science tells us that two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. One must give way. So as 80 to 90% of the world reaches for something new, those who have benefited the most from the old are willing to go all out to maintain the old, because if the old leaves, their wealth, their power, and their influence leaves with them, and they are prepared to kill everybody. And we know that how? Because they have a doctrine called MAD, mutually assured destruction. If I can't win, if I can't rule, if I can't dominate, I'm killing everybody. That's the American policy. That's the European policy. And guess what? Let me drop another tidbit for the people who are listening. Do you remember the Cold War and the documentaries about the Cold War and how they talked about the United States and Russia going at each other, and how every time you looked around, people thought that we were going to nuclear war, and how America ripped communist China from the Soviet Union, and how they wanted to use the communist China to play against the Soviet Union. Do you know that America's military doctrine states this? It still states this to this day, but it stated this then. Did you know that the U.S. doctrine stated that if a nuclear war broke out between the United States and Russia, that America would still send nukes to China, to attack China with nukes, even though China had no corn. If China was not involved in it, do you know that that has been a policy since the 50s and the 60s? Do you know that? This shows you the level and the magnitude of insanity of the people in power. These policies most people don't understand. And because the people in power have benefited by having the dollar as the life's blood of the world's economy, they have exercised undue and unwarranted influence and power over the world. And people, listen, they tell you that power is an addictive drug in and of itself. And the more power you get, the more power you want. That's why fame is an addictive drug. The more fame you get, you see, the more people want fame. Think about this. When a person acquires, you can be broke your whole life. And you acquire $1 million, you want 5 million. You get 5 million, you want 20 million. You get 20 million, you want 100 million. You want 100 million, then you say, you know what? I'm gonna make it my way to $1 billion. And from the billion to 100, it is never enough. You have this. Hold on one second, Rashid.
I'll give you.
You have this underlying addiction to power and wealth. That's the same with the U.S. and the Western world. They have this underlying addiction. Go ahead.
I'll give you a better one. A boxer, right? He out there boxing, and then he's past his prime. You say, why don't that kid? He's 50 years old. He's still out there trying to box. He's addicted to it.
I brought that up about Roy Jones, how I know Roy and all this stuff, and how in his prime,
he was terrible.
He was just tarnishing his legacy out there getting beat by all of these young boys. And that's an addiction. The fame and the applause and the adulation from the people, it becomes addictive. And that is what America is addicted to, people saying that she's the most powerful nation in the world. And she's so addicted to it that she rarely missed the opportunity to say that she has the best military. She has the best weapons. She's the most powerful. She has the largest this and the best
military in the universe, don't she?
To it.
Don't she? The best military in the whole entire universe. Everybody knows that. But once again, what does your scriptures tell you about the rich man? Whatever happened to that guy? Who keep calling about I am the richest. He every time he opens up his mouth, he condemns himself. If you believe in the scriptures, we know what happened to the rich man.
And then that what Nebuchadnezzar said, look at what my hands have wrought. He was so inebriated on his power, his influence, his wealth, and his kingdom that when he said, look at what my hands have wrought, his kingdom fell. His kingdom fell.
Yeah, because he was inebriated with his own self-importance.
Boom. And that is what America, we are the most powerful. We are decades ahead. We are this, we are that. It is not enough anymore for them to hear it from other people. They must constantly reiterate it to themselves of how much more important and how much more powerful and how much more rich and how much more influential they are over other people. It's an addiction that can't be broken.
But it's an illusion because if you cut off his resources to the rest of the planet, he is poor. He has nothing. What happens if he can't get no oil from somewhere else? What happens if he can't? Well, we see what's happening. He can't get no gasoline, no gas from Russia. We see how that garden is turning into a bunch of weeds, right? Because he has nothing to produce to make these great inventions and products that he have around the world, that he ships around the world. So he's not as powerful as he think he is, and that's his downfall. Running around thinking that everybody else is his lackeys, and that is the problem now. Everybody is waking up, and now they want to get off of his off the American merry-go-round. And he gets mad.
And let me play this real quick to back up what you're saying, Rashid. Here we go, right here. Check this out.
Amid Trump's predictions on the dollar's decay, China and Malaysia are about to start talks on establishing an Asian monetary fund, according to Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. That's as the states look to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar in bilateral trade.
There is no reason for a country like Malaysia to continue relying on the US dollar in attracting investments into the country. At the Boao Forum in Hainan, I openly proposed the idea of the Asian Monetary Fund because we only rely on the dollar or on the IMF.
According to the PM, the two states' national currencies may now be used in trade negotiations. He also discussed a record $39 billion package that China is set to invest in Malaysia. There have been previous discussions on the establishment of an Asian monetary fund, which struggled to take off due to the strength of the U.S. dollar. As de-dollarization gains momentum, an increasing number of countries are dumping the greenback in their trade settlements. Member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations are in talks to abandon the use of the dollar and euro as main trade currencies. China and Brazil have also signed a deal to conduct trade settlements in their own currencies, and India's new foreign trade policy allows international trade settlement in the Indian rupee. Asia political risk analyst Ross Feingold believes the fund may encourage trade facilitation between the countries.
I actually think one takeaway from this, and Prime Minister Anwar mentioned this, he first proposed this idea over 25 years ago when he was finance minister, earlier stage of his political career. So it shows how difficult it is to actually implement this. Clearly, there's momentum to do some of this. There's clearly momentum between China and some of its major trading partners to do some of their bilateral trade in currencies other than the U.S. dollar. There was a recent agreement between China and Brazil, for example. It's a little easier to facilitate this when state-owned companies are involved and the transactions might be very large transactions in the resources trade, where one sale of a tanker of oil is a very large amount of money. And it's easier to facilitate this if this monetary fund idea really does proceed into serious negotiations. Again, I would expect the United States to try and persuade some countries not to join, and they might have some success. So maybe a Japan or a South Korea, which are very close to the United States, won't join. But countries like Thailand or Indonesia, Malaysia, perhaps Singapore, they might very well join.
Well, he said states like Japan may not join, but a lot of people don't know that Great Britain, France, Japan, and others have already been trading in the yuan. As a matter of fact, the UK has a yuan trading thing. I forget what it's called, but China gave them permission to issue certain bonds in yuan.
So how long?
Go ahead, Rashid.
How long have me and you been saying to do what that guy been saying? For years.
For years.
And years. And the reason why it's not taking off, because you remember, the American can come in and buy a puppet leader. No, don't go along with that. But if you put something tangible, oil, gold, uranium, cobalt, something copper, something tangible behind your money. The people that don't have nothing tangible behind their money, only a fool would go with nothing as as something behind their money. If you got gold and you got a promise, what are you going to take, gold or promise? Anybody with half a brain gonna take gold.
Mm-hmm.
That is what they should have been doing this years ago, but it's they'll get around to it after a while. All you have to do is to stop him from interfering with your currency and in your country. Is get off his money.
Mm-hmm.
Let it go, and trade among people among your own country. and then have something tangible behind it, because he ain't got nothing tangible behind him. And then you'll find out his dollar start doing this.
But you got to make sure when you do this, you have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted with your military. Because if you move, if you do this and make this move against the empire, and you don't have something to rebuff the empire, and they see that you're attacking their national security. Oh, what did the woman say? She said, "This is against the interest and the rights of U.S. citizens." When you do that, that means that they are willing to put the full throttle and full power of the military behind this. So you have to make sure that if you do this, you have enough to give them a bloody nose.
What you need to do, what you have to do, is jump up under China's curtail.
Yes.
Jump up under Russia's curtail. Do it like his little minions do.
Yes.
You know, if anybody come after him, oh, America, help! Well, you better get China and Russia on board with saving you. And if you do that, you can defeat him without a military conflict.
Yeah. I see a comment. It says the government of America can fall. It does not mean something stronger cannot replace it. How do we protect it during the transition? Well, first of all, the fall, when this thing happens, what happens will be final. There will be no replacing the corruption. See, most people don't want to admit this. Listen to me. I'm a straight shooter, so I have to tell it like it is. I don't care if you're black, white, brown, purple, red, polka dot, or green. I'm a straight shooter, and I have to tell it to you like it is. The corruption is so inherent. The racism is so down to the bone. The greed is so down there. And the bloodshed, the bones of the empire is blood soaked. It's not that if the government fall to replace it. No. It has to be completely removed. Everything that's dealing with that has to be completely removed. And from that, from the ashes of that, maybe if you have the right thinkers and the right minds, that you can produce something. You can't produce something right with a wrong mind. You can't produce a better government using the practices of the old government that is being removed. You can't produce a more viable and just nation using the same basis that the unjust and unviable nation use. It must be something altogether new. New thoughts produce new actions. New actions produce new results. You cannot have the same thoughts, because the same thoughts produce the same actions, which will produce the same government, which will in time produce the same results, and this time may be more dire, because we're not dealing with sticks and stones and arrows and bows. We're dealing with thermonuclear weapons. That is the main thing. So again, as we often say, we say that it is the Asiatic nations who are the ones that's going to lay America low. And we're watching this in real time. We've said this for decades, and we've been saying it, and now we have a platform to really say it to the people. So I want to go to something to show you just how bad things are. I'm going to play this little short clip. Pay close attention. See, not only is America squeezed militarily and politically, she's squeezed economically. She's caught in such a situation is that, okay, she's fighting for her survival in her life, in her world. The so-called Western world, or the rules-based order, or the so-called international order, is an order under U.S. and U.K. dominion. That is a fact. So she's fighting, in the life's blood of this order is the dollar. So she's caught in this catch-22. I must, since everybody's getting off the dollar, I must up the ante with more wars and more provocations. But if I up the ante and put more war and more provocation, then I must spend more money that I don't have, money that I must borrow from the very nations that I'm trying to uproot and destroy and overthrow. So she's caught in that conundrum. But she's willing to do all that she can to stave off certain demise, because this is all she knows. Now, to show you the level of in the dire situation that America's in, I want you to listen to this, okay? All right, pay close attention. This is only like 3 minutes, so pay close attention.
I'm watching this one U.S. Senator, Kennedy, talking to this guy from the Fed. about the stress test. And one of the things that they're saying up on Capitol Hill, particularly the Democrats, they're saying that the problem was that Silicon Valley Bank was too small to be stress tested, that the largest banks were the banks that were required to pass the Fed's stress tests. And Silicon Valley Bank didn't make the cut. And so this Senator Kennedy is pointing out the truth.
If you had stress tested Silicon Valley Bank in 2022, it wouldn't have made any difference, would it?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, you didn't test for Silicon Valley Bank's problem. I've read your report. Your stress test, you stress tested these 34 banks for falling GDP, spike in unemployment, and defaults in commercial real estate. Isn't that correct?
Yes, in a typical adverse scenario for banks, we're testing falling interest rate
But that
environments.
wasn't our problem in 2022.
I completely agree
and
with
it's
you.
not our problem today. The problem
Yeah.
is inflation, high interest rate, and loss of value in government bonds, isn't it?
I completely agree with you.
So you stress tested in 2022 for the wrong thing.
When these tests were announced, it was like 3 years ago, right? When the Fed came out and they did all these stress tests, and they made a big deal in the media because they were promoting, hey, look, the banking system is sound. All of these banks passed our stress test. Hallelujah. We got nothing to worry about. Good thing we got the Fed on the job putting these banks through these rigorous stress tests. And now we could all sleep soundly knowing that all these banks have passed the Fed's stress test. Now, most people probably just, okay, great. The Fed stress tested them and they passed. Nobody bothered to actually look at the assumptions that were in the stress test. I did. I looked at them and I saw that they were testing for the wrong thing. And if you don't believe me, you could just look at Twitter, because I happened to pull up this tweet and I retweeted it today. And the original tweet was from June 21st of 2019. This is when they had announced the results of these stress tests. And everybody was lauding the results and how great it was that we had such a sound banking system that all the banks passed. Right? And I said, I'm going to read my own tweet. Right? This is what I said. The Fed's stress tests are worthless. The most adverse scenario assumes both inflation and long-term interest rates fall. During the next recession, both inflation and long-term interest rates will rise. No major bank could survive stagflation. That's why the Fed doesn't test for it. That's it. I nailed this 3 years ago. The idiots at the Fed, and these guys are supposed to be the smart ones, but they were too dumb to see what I tweeted about 3 years ago. And again, I didn't tweet about it because I was so smart. It's just they were that dumb to have missed something so obvious.
So multiple recessions, which they don't like to say, and I hear all of the economists and the investors say recession. It's a word behind that they don't like to acknowledge, and that is depression. When you have multiple recessions and you have a long-term recession that goes over 16 months, that becomes a depression. So if the recession started in 2008, as they say, we're in 2023. What does that mean we're in? I'm asking. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm asking everybody this. What does that mean that we're in? They don't like to say that, but common sense tells us that we are not in a recession anymore. We are in a what? It starts with a D. A depression. We are in a depression that nobody likes to talk about. But anyway, again, the situation has become super dire. The debt crisis. Look, 1.75 trillion in student debt, 1.75 trillion in banks, unrealized losses. We're looking at a housing market that's collapsing. We're looking at the used car market. We're looking at the new car market. Well, every field of economics show us that the stress is becoming unbearable for an economy that is a service economy and rarely produces anything. It shows us that to make war with nations that do produce things and are willing to invest in the nation and willing to sell you things at face value for your currency is insane. It shows us that. So we have irrefutable proof that the leadership of America in the Western world are insane. What say you, Rashid, before I go to this next clip?
Currency is the credit of a nation. Once again, what is backing that currency? Just because I say me and this brother here, we can put our face up on a currency, but nobody going to accept it, right? Same thing with his. When the people find that he don't have nothing, his currency is really it's nothing. And when the other people stop accepting it, then he'll die. That's the only way it can be. He didn't put out so much of this worthless money all over and with no way to ever pay anybody back. And they keep hollering about the credit of the United States. The United States ain't got no credit because they ain't got nothing to produce anything with. I think who was that? Gerald Salente was on there, and they were saying that that America doesn't have anything to produce to what's the difference between money and wealth, or money and currency, right? They don't have anything, nothing to back up anything. A bunch of McDonald's burger flippers. Or you go to college and get a 4-year degree and come out and be a manager at McDonald's. And even McDonald's is laying off people.
And Walmart.
It's going to be, we keep telling you, there's a great crash coming to America. And we all going to be out of work. We have talked that there will be no jobs
anywhere.
None. Mark our words and see. Everything we were taught is coming to pass. Everything.
Yeah. And I was thinking about Walmart. I was seeing a little article earlier today was talking about the situation in Walmart and how now we see what McDonald's is doing. They've taken almost a whole week off talking about closing their offices to restructure.
Hey, go home and restructure. And the next thing you know, you get an email and say you're fired.
Hold on, but they say this. But keep working though. So what the people are gonna do? Take Big Macs home and have cars pull up to their windows and they're gonna flip the form and keep going. I mean, the lunacy of I'm telling you, sometimes you have to laugh about it. Walmart closing store after store after store. There was just another report that came out today that was talking about Walmart is now in the process of closing at least 15 more stores in one state and at least a dozen in another state. This does, again, stop for a minute. Let us think. Let us use common sense. The Bible tells us, come, let us reason together. To reason, one must use the God-given faculties and look at the situation and come up with a conclusion, a logical conclusion, right? Now, if the credit markets are freezing up, if the debt market is about to explode, if the housing market is collapsing, if the student loan market is exploding, if the new car and used car markets are starting to explode, and the United States continues to take on debt in perpetuity with no way of paying us off. If the book tells us, come, let us reason together, reason is common sense. And common sense tells us that this is leading to nothing good. There can be nothing good that comes from this, especially when you have all that wrapped up into provocation and war. Remember this, people. This often gets left out of all of the economic conversations. This often gets left out of all of the financial conversations about the dollar and everything. America has bases everywhere, right? Yes, she does. She has bases everywhere. Now, when she
But
does
not
all of
too
these
long.
war games, if when she has all these war games, when she flies her bombers and mock strikes against Russia, or mock strikes against Syria, or mock strikes against North Korea, or flies her bombers close to somebody sees, or send drones, that's millions of dollars per operation. When she sells her carrier fleets, those are tens of millions and even billions of dollars. Now, to sell it, to supply it, to resupply it, to maintain it, to service it, these are billions, tens of millions, and billions of dollars that she must borrow out of thin air from future generations that she'll never be able to pay back. So common sense tells us that do it. I tell you what, you do it. You make a salary of $100,000 a year, and I tell you what, you spend $20 million a year, and see how long you'll get a loan from a bank, and see how long you'll be financially.
Wait a minute, wait a minute, brother. Wait a minute. Unless you're Donald Trump, you can do stuff like that. You can go bankrupt a whole bunch of times and still the banks and stuff. Yeah, give them some money, give them some more money.
Hey, and Donald Trump did one. Remember, Donald Trump this is the only. Now, you know I don't like Biden, but I got to say this about Trump because you and I laughed about this. Donald Trump was so arrogant about it that he blew a lot of the bank's money, and then when they refused to loan him something, he sued the banks.
Yeah.
We're not making this up. We are not making this up.
This is the mindset of these people. They have rules for them and rules for the rest of us. And we'll never be in their circle. But that's what's taking place.
Yeah.
To put out, like you said, what you were just saying was the credit card, right?
Yeah.
That's all that is using the credit. I was watching a video with one guy was talking about in 1971, America was broke because they had no gold to give out any money. I mean, to trade between nations. Prior to 1941, that's how countries did they trade. They traded from gold between one another. Well, yes. In 1971, America didn't have any more gold. So then Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger came up with this scheme,
petrodollar,
called the 3-card Molly, otherwise known as the dollar. The hoodwink the rest of the suckers, people around the planet, to accept their money for nothing.
I want to go ahead, finish your thought.
You got to admire them for their chutzpah to come up with a scheme to give people their money with their face on it for your goods.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Everybody hit the like button. Hit the like button.
I got a bunch of dollar bills, and then I got this shipload of oil over here. There's shipload of finished goods over here, or the shiploads of uranium, the shipload, and then what you gonna give them in return? A bunch of paper with my face on.
That's a scheme, but I'm telling you, that's one of the best schemes anybody can come up with.
What they call itself, the famous guy for making suckers and ripping people off, Bailey, Barnum Bailey, right?
Oh yeah, the carnival, yeah. Barnum
Bailey. He got nothing on this scheme, boy.
Yeah. Now, Jonathan Soul. You said U.S. had the hegemony since World War II. This decline would take some years. No. The decline started back in the 60s, before the 60s. Listen, what you don't realize is this. The collapse was ongoing. What you're seeing the manifestation of the collapse right now. When America started robbing her currency of gold and silver, you knew that the end was near. From 65 on, the coins had no silver. Before then, you had silver dollars, you had silver quarters, you had silver nickels, silver dimes, excuse me. And from 65 to 70, the U.S. robbed the rest of the coins, which were the half dollars and the dollars, of all of the silver. And when they got caught with that, in 71, we have the French Prime Minister and former General de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle, who kept watching America's spending habits and how the spending was outweighing her reserves and how the spending kept escalating and the reserves kept being depleted. And he said, whoa up. Hey, what are you doing? And Nixon said, well, the dollar is as good as gold. And de Gaulle said, well, then give me gold then. And he wanted to turn in the paper. And this is what forced the U.S. off the gold and the silver standard, because the jig was up. She did not have enough gold and silver to redeem all of those outstanding dollars or those bonds. So this is the manifestation of the fall. Now, what we're living in now is this right here. I liken this to something I said the other day. If you get a snake and you chop the head off the snake, and if it's a poisonous snake, you have to bury the head because you can still be bitten and it can still inject venom in you. But the body does not recognize that it's been decapitated from the head for up to 4 to 6 hours thereafter. So the body still contorts, the muscles still move. And so if you see the from the head, you would think that snake was still alive. But sooner or later, the muscle, the atrophy sets in, and the muscles start to harden, and the snake soon starts slowing down. And then
rigor mortis sets in.
The snake has been dead. Rigor mortis sets in, then the snake is dead. That is exactly what we're seeing in the monetary system of America and the world. The snake's head has been chopped off, and now you see China and Russia and all of these other nations moving towards gold and more sound commodity-based system, which they have ample supplies of. And you see the snake contorting by waging wars and destabilization and color revolutions. But sooner rather than later, rigor mortis is setting in. And
that's right. It's like a dog that dies, and a fleas is sitting up there sucking the blood of the old dog. And one day the dog died, and the fleas had to jump up off that dog. This is what's happening to America.
Medi says there's Medi says the ramen noodle era. We've entered the ramen noodle era where you can't buy anything but noodles. Let's see.
But this is what's happening. The people don't understand. Like you said, he died way back then, and this is the final act of the rigor is setting into his body. Everybody else got gold. America we don't need no gold because we got the American dollar.
Yeah.
So why should we stock any gold?
I do want to say this to the astral atmosphere. Says, then what job should we look for then? Listen to what Rashid said. There will be no jobs. When this thing collapses, there will be no job. The thing that you should be concerned about is self-preservation, which is the first law of nature, and to preserve the livelihood of you and your family, which is to start farming. If you live in an apartment, grow up. If you got a yard, grow out and up. Start learning basic skills that will be essential for you when the system goes down. This is what is going on because it's going down. We see it.
And the main thing is to store up food. Here you got a man over here that's got a bunch of gold. Here they got a bunch of food. Who you think gonna live the longest?
Yeah,
you can't eat no gold. You can't eat no silver.
No, but listen. And like Rashid said, get things that you need, like medical kits. If you need antibiotics or something like this, I'm not a medical profession, but I can tell you what we've used over the years. We have gone and we have bought supplies of fish antibiotics. We can't vouch for anybody else, but fish antibiotics are the same antibiotics that humans use, but you have to get them in pill form or capsules or whatever. And not the liquid. I haven't tried liquid, but I'm telling you, and they work just like as if you went to the pharmacy and you got them over the counter. You want to get alcohol, not to drink. Alcohol helps if you get cut or something like that, it helps with cooking. You can trade alcohol. You can do things. We don't drink, so we don't promote consumption of alcohol. You want to get all of the things that are based that will be needed when a system. Think about this. Let me tell you something. Okay. About 15 minutes ago, you heard Rashid and I talk about Walmart and how they're closing down stores. Remember that Walmart, outside of the U.S. government, is the largest employer of people in America. Now, when Walmart is the largest employer of people in America outside of the government, and it is the largest department store in America, if those things started shutting down, where are you going to get the basic stuff if you don't make a way to get the stuff now?
And remember, 93% of Walmart's goods come from China. Now, if they're gonna fight China, do you think China gonna still send them good ships over there and fight China? But China gonna be still sending those shiploads of goods back over here so you can go to Walmart and buy something. We're not living in a fantasy land. This is real. The only job you're going to have is the job that you make for yourself.
That's it.
Because Chris, this is a world collapsing event that's getting ready to happen with the dollar. I mean, with the empire. Like you say, the empire is flailing around mad and socking everybody. Somebody just walk down the street, haul up and sock it. And this world is down. And nobody fault.
And what did Greg Marino tell us? The financial guru, what did he tell us? He says people don't realize, and I'm paraphrasing, exactly the magnitude of what's about to go down. He said what's about to happen will be biblical in proportions. He said that it will be more deadly and more devastating than a nuclear exchange. When the debt market, when the bond market collapses because of the quadrillions of dollars in derivatives, it will be more devastating than a nuclear exchange. This is what Gregory Manarino said. You can check him out at traderschoice.net. But this is what we're talking about. But I want to say Chris H says, and Chris H has it right here. He says, at Astral Atmosphere, although I want to hear our host answer the question, I don't know if it's about doing jobs. We have to grow food and form groups and with people to care for ourselves. That is what we're talking about. That is what you have to look out for, because things are going to get bad. Mad Max, put it like this. Have you ever saw the movie Mad Max? Not this newer one, the original one. The landscape will be looking like something like that when it happens. Think about, because you got wars raging everywhere. You're going to have stores closing, banks closing, food will be scarce, because all of your financial pundits tell you that if there's an emergency and the shipping is cut off, what did they say, Rashid? 2 weeks, and there'll be no food in the store. 2 weeks.
That's right.
2 weeks. But no food in America. Go ahead.
That's right. No food in America. But what you got to understand is this thing is going to come up on you all of a sudden. You have to prepare now. It's not like back in the 30s when they had the Depression. Well, most of our parents were rural people anyway. When they had the Depression, they were on the farm somewhere, and that's how they made their living. They kept saying, "Well, we got no money." He said, "Well, I ain't never had no money." So, but the guy that's way up there, that's flying real high like that eagle. You know, the eagle got some tremendous vision. It's miles up there. And then when he falls, you really got a fall that he will never recover from. So, but back in the 30s, when the Depression had, most people were in a rural area. Now, everybody done left the rural area and everybody congregated into the cities. What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah.
Where they stop in some markets and stuff. As me and the brother talk about the toughest guy you can think of. That guy's real hard. Let him not eat for 2 or 3 days. Let's see how hard he is there.
Yeah.
He's going to be docile as a lamb.
Hey, let me play this last clip, everyone. Let me play this. This is about 6 or 7 minutes. This is something that you must listen to. This is by Nouriel Roubini. And he warns about the crashes that's coming in the dire situation in the financial market. This is very important that you understand this. I don't think people connect this stuff with the wars, the dollar collapse, the shortage in food. Listen, again, let's go back to something, because sometimes you have to reiterate stuff to people. If China supplies 93% of all goods on the shelves, if you go to war with China and China has 1.3, 1.4 trillion dollars of your debt, and they call you in on your debt, and also stop supplying of all the 93% of goods. Now check this out. The banks that made the loans to the trucking companies, the railways, the cargo plane, and the cargo ships, they go belly up because these people no longer have anywhere to get their money from, because the stores are closing, which means there is a major knock on of unemployment and stuff like that. I'm telling you, it is unreal how it's going to be like this.
Wait a minute, brother. Wait a minute. Won't America do with that $1.5 trillion debt like he did Russia? Just take it.
Yeah. Well, China's prepared for that too. China's prepared for that too. With the gold.
You know, like a strong arm robbery, kept walking on a 45 and shove a 45 and, give me that money.
But remember Trump said that we should renege on when he was the president, he said we should renege on he tried to use coke. Well, I won't say that virus, well, because I don't want YouTube kicking us off the air. That virus, he said we should renege on paying back the 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 trillion dollars. But China has prepared herself with this. That's why she bought up all the commodities. That's why she bought up all of this gold. That's why she bought up all of this silver. And if she does that to China, guess what happens? All the goods stop, and guess what happens? Then all of the other nations will say, you know what? We're done. You did it to Russia. We're done. You did it to China. We're done.
Isn't that what Trump does all the time? Don't pay his bills.
Well, that's what all of the leaders do. I don't think
right.
Biden
all of them
pays
don't pay his bills. He never pays his bills. Never. He gonna come, like you see, you're gonna take a shipload of oil, come in here, and he gonna give you a bunch of a computer. He gonna go to the computer and punch on there and say, okay, you got your money.
Yeah. So now let me play this clip. I want you all to pay close attention to what Nurul Rabini has to say about this. And after that, we'll come back, we'll discuss it, and then we'll close out. We want to please hit the like button. We want to thank all of you for giving us your time, because time is the most precious commodity that anybody could ever have, and it is a you
can't never get it back.
Yeah, you can never get this back. This is a non-renewable commodity. Once it's gone, you can never get back. You can never turn back the hands of time. So we want to thank you for treating us in such a way to give us the most valued gift that you could give us, and that's a part of your life, which is your time. So check this out right here, and hit the like buttons.
This seems to be something that's incredibly elementary. Your incoming freshmen at NYU already know that when rates go up, when the yield rises, the price of the bond assets falls. Is that the simplest explanation for what happened in terms of the banking crisis here in the U.S.? And were these just idiosyncratic problems with bank managers that didn't know what they were doing?
Yes, it's a good part of it. Both bank managers, regulators, and investors forgot about duration risk and market risk. When yields are higher, the price of the bonds is lower. Investors lost 20% last year on 10-year treasuries. The S&P 500 went down only by 15%. And for the overall U.S. banks, you have about $620 billion of unrealized losses on the securities out of a capital of $2.2 trillion. And for some of the regional banks, the number are much higher. But it's not just the securities have lower value. Many of the banks had issued loans like mortgages at fixed rates at 30%, 30 years, when interest rates were 1%, while right now there are 3.5 for 10-year treasuries. So the market value of those assets is also down. People have estimated, therefore, the overall losses for the U.S. banking system for the rise in interest rates, both on securities and loans, are equivalent to 1.8 trillion out of a capital of 2.2 trillion. Hundreds of the smaller banks are literally insolvent. So that's the fundamental problem. When interest rates go higher, the value of securities and loans is lower, and then we have mass liquidity and solvency problems.
Your recent book was called Mega Threats, 10 Dangerous Trends That Imperil Our Future, and I wonder if this is among them. Interest rates at 5% or even 6% don't seem like a mega threat. We've had rates as high as 20% in recent history, in the early 80s. But we have so much more debt now than we did back then, which means carrying costs are much more painful. Is this higher rate regime a mega threat, Nouriel?
It is, because in the 1970s, when we had the stagflationary shock that led to inflation and recession, debt ratios in advanced economies were only 100% of GDP, private and public debt. Today, there are 420. So we have the worst of the 70s in terms of negative supply shock, reduced growth, and cause inflation, and we have debt ratios that are much higher than after the GFC crisis. And during the GFC crisis, we had the debt problem, housing debt, mortgages, bank debt, but we had negative demand shocks and a credit crunch that led to deflation, so we could do massive monetary, fiscal, and credit easing. Now we're entering a recession and financial instability, having to raise interest rates because the inflation is too high. So we get inconsistency and a trilemma. We cannot achieve price stability, maintain economic growth, have financial stability at the same time. So eventually we'll have an economic and financial crash.
I mean, central banks say they can do those two things. Good morning to you, Nouriel. They say that they can have financial stability and they can control monetary policy because they're different levers dealing with different problems. You doubt that?
Yeah, there's this separation principle that says we're going to use the interest rate policy for price stability, and we're going to use liquidity to backstop the financial system and have financial stability. But that occurs only when the problems of the financial system are purely liquidity and limited to individual institutions. When you have a systemic problem and there is a risk of insolvency, and by the way, an economic recession is going to lead us from duration and market risk to credit risk, you cannot essentially lose liquidity support of the banks as a way of backstopping the system, and there's an inconsistency between price stability and financial stability. And we're headed towards a hard landing, a credit crunch, and significant amounts of losses, both for debtors that are facing much higher nominal and real rates, but also for savers and creditors, because rising interest rates reduces the market value of their creditors' assets. So you have financial instability, price instability, and economic instability.
Nouriel, you used the phrase credit crunch, and we all threw around the term credit crisis in the late 2000s. We know that that led to the financial crisis and everything that followed. How bad do you think this credit crunch gets this time around? We heard the Fed uncertain, and many voices uncertain about how much we see a pullback in the offering of credit.
Well, most of the financing to SMEs and to households in the U.S. occurs not from the large money center banks, but from these regional banks. And these regional banks are in trouble. There is deposit flight. There are uninsured deposits. There are fundamental security losses. There'll be a tightening of credit and credit standards. They have to be more cautious. They'll have to raise capital. So they're going to lend more. Credit growth is going to probably go from 10% annualized to closer to zero, and therefore a good chunk of Main Street and Middle America is going to be subject to a significant credit crunch. That's going to exacerbate the risk of a harder landing of the real economy.
Do we have, I want to change subjects a bit, Nouriel, and talk about another threat that Steve Ratner has raised in a New York Times op-ed. He thinks working from home is a real problem for America, for American productivity, especially as Europeans and other cultures return to the office. Do you believe that it's going to be an issue if we don't get back 5 days a week? Is that going to be a problem for productivity?
Well, there are different views on it. Some people believe that the optimal situation, like now, having 2 or 3 days at home, 2 or 3 days at work, is okay. Depends on the type of professions. But I think the biggest issue with the labor market right now is that we have unemployment rate very low. We have aging of population. We have the falling labor force participation rate. We have restriction to migration. We have beginning of labor strife and strikes and so on. We have the great resignation, so we have wage inflation around 6%, and people don't want to go back to work because the labor market is tight and they have now power. That means that inflation is not going to fall towards 2%, because in the service sector, the main cost of production is labor cost, and if wage inflation stays around 5-6% with the tightness of the labor market and the power that people have to stay at home, then inflation is not going to fall, and therefore the Fed will have to hike rates much more than 5%, and if they don't do it, because they worry about an economic and financial crash, there will be eventually a de-anchoring of inflation expectation, a wage price spiral, and we're going to end up with high inflation, recession, and the kind of stagflation like we saw in the 1970s.
So we see them talking about this, and this goes to the point of what we say about idiocracy. This show was done on the fly, and we say a peep into American idiocracy. You continue to spend money on wars, which are not beneficial to you, your constituents, your citizens, nor your allies, nor your enemies. At a time when your people are struggling, your allies are struggling, and the entire world is engulfed in a massive global depression. The idiocracy of the policy shows us the detachment from reality of the policy makers, which puts the entire world in jeopardy because of their schizophrenic, arrogant, racist, fascist policies that they try to impose on everybody and everything. What say you, Rashid?
What it say? I am, and there is none other. Look what my hands in brought. Yeah, we can look at what your hands in brought. What you get is what you put out. Isn't that a saying of the scripture? So shall you put out, so shall you reap. He's reaping what he sowed. He put out death, rape, and murder, and now it's going to overwhelm him. Listen good. There are going to be 3 great wars. One in the Middle East,
North Africa,
one in Asia, one in Asia, and one in Europe. Mark our words. Don't you see? Watch and see them when it come true.
Yeah. We're watching the devolution of the entire society. I mean, it is clear for everyone to see, and nobody can say that they don't understand. Also, everyone, before we go off there, and as we're talking to you all, please don't leave yet. Go to all of our platforms on Odyssey, odyssey.com/@the-red-pill-diaries. Go to our Twitch, twitch.com/the-red-pill-diaries. Mobile.twitter.com/pill_diaries, and go to Rumble, rumble.com/C/C-1702-905 or rumble.com/the-red-pill-diaries. Also, like us on this platform. Also, go to locals.com, and join up to our Red Pill movement. It's the empowerment of truth.redpill. It's the empowerment of truth.com, .locals.com, excuse me. I'm sorry. Join us. The more people join the movement, the more we can get the truth out. Also, Rashid, is there anything that you want to say? Because there's a few things that I want to say before we close out.
No. Just keep your eyes open. Watch.
Go ahead, man.
No. That's it.
Oh, okay,
Watch.
okay. Well, listen, everybody, listen. What we're trying to do to you, we're trying to give to you the truth the way it's supposed to be given, and not the way other people are telling it to you, because they have their own agendas, and some of them don't know, and some of them know, but they are, I would call them double agents or whatever. And so you don't get the complete truth. So what we try to do is give it to you butt naked, raw, without a chaser. All right. I'm looking down in the comment. It says, suppose you were an idiot, and suppose you were a member of Congress. But I repeat myself, Mark Twain. I got you. That is from None Your Business. Anyway, everybody, listen. We love you. If you love truth, we love you. And but remember that God, He would always love you best. I know Rashid has some parting words for you all. I know he has to. It looked like you did. So say something to him, Rashid.
No, we done said everything that need to be said. Just watch it. Watch what's going on and keep your eyes open.
All right. Now listen, as Rashid said, there's three things. They're gonna be three great wars. We call it the MENA region, Middle Eastern North African region. That will be a regional war, and that will break the back of U.S. and U.K. power and Israeli power in that region. And America, the U.K., they will be forced to leave that region. There's going to be a major conflagration in Asia, in the Asia Pacific, and that's when China is going to dig in America's backside militarily. And all of those nations like Japan and South Korea, they're going to remember what America did to them. These are U.S. allies, and they're going to bag China when it gets down to it. Why? No one has said this, but watch when it happens. You'll think of us at the Red Pill Diaries, and you'll say they told us. And from that point on, America will refocus on the continent of Europe, where she will be put into a battle with Russia. And because Russia will dig deep into her behind, kicking her behind very badly. Listen to us good. We're telling you this. You can read your Bible. You can see it there. But Russia will beat America's behind, and this will force America into a nuclear strike. This will not engulf the entire world, as everybody will want to. Now, the blowback of some of the nuclear fallout will go. But I'm saying that this will not be a thermonuclear war that will devastate the entire world. This will be one confined to Europe. It is coming. These things are coming, and they will be devastating. And America will, after those wars, she will limp back home, and she'll have to pay the piper within her own borders. And that is why most of the politicians are concerned with that southern border, because they know those nations down, the Latin American nations that they've done wrong, will come up through that border and spank her. And they have not forgotten. I keep telling people, you cannot drop 2 atomic bombs on a nation like Japan and think that their memory is short and they forgot. You cannot occupy them for more than half a century and think that they're just okay with that. You can't do that for 60 to 70 years in South Korea and believe that that's okay. What you put out is what you're going to get back. What does science say? For every action, there's an equal or greater reaction. And even though America says she's the exception to that rule, there's no exception to God's basic laws of creation. On that note, we go out the same way we came in, with love and peace. Remember that we love you, but God will always love you best. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous, because righteousness is what is going to keep you in the midst of all of this stuff. And I got to say it, Mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you.